A weed is just a plant growing where nobody planned it. 5 of the most useful ones are already in your yard. One stings you into respecting it, and another hides a root sweet enough to stock your pantry. Herbalists have relied on them for generations. We are learning to spot each one, what to harvest, and the folk preparations people still make. Let's start with the one you already know by name. Number 1. Dandelion is the golden face you already know, but it is the deep-toothed green rosette underfoot that tells the real story. Those jagged leaves, hugging the ground like a lion's mane, pop up in lawns, cracks, playgrounds. Any patch of sun and soil will do. In early spring, the leaves are tender and just a little bitter, perfect for tossing into a salad or steeping as a morning tea. By mid-spring, dandelion bursts into a sun-bright flower. Kids call it a wishmaker, herbalists call it a pantry staple. The seed head, that white puffball, is a marvel of natural engineering. A single plant can launch thousands of pappus-tipped seeds into the breeze, enough to keep dandelions thriving for years in a single yard. Dandelion is a whole plant herb, with leaves in spring, flowers in early summer, and roots in autumn after the first frost sweetens them. Folk tradition says, the roasted root, ground and brewed, once stood in for coffee when beans were scarce. Herbalists have used the leaf as a classic bitter tonic, the flower for wild wine or yellow dye, and the root for a gentle, earthy decoction. All 3 parts, leaf, flower, root, work together to tap into nature's intended delivery system. If you're foraging, watch for lookalikes. Cat's ear shares that yellow flower, but its leaves are smooth and spoon-shaped, not deeply notched. Dandelion's signature is the deep tooth and the hollow leafless stem. Once you spot the rosette, you'll start seeing dandelion everywhere, each part offering something different all year long. In second place, Broadleaf Plantain is the backyard bandage leaf that's quietly patched up more playground knees and mosquito bites than most medicine cabinets ever will. You will spot it by its low, oval leaves, broad, flat, and hugging the ground. Each one lined with deep parallel ribs and a thick, pale mid-vein you can feel with your thumb. These rosettes show up wherever shoes and paws tread. Sidewalk cracks, curb strips, the shadiest corner of a city park, even the muddy edge of a baseball diamond. Plantain loves damp, disturbed soil, but it is just as tough in dry lawns and schoolyards, sending up a single green spike of tiny flowers from March clear through October. For foragers, the best leaves are young and bright, picked in spring before the flower stalk rises. Those leaves are famous for their slick, almost slippery feel. Herbalists call it mucilage, a gel-like fiber that can make up a hefty portion of the dried leaf. That's the secret to plantain's instant poultice. Just crush a fresh leaf between your fingers, press it gently onto a sting or scrape, and let the cool, moist surface do its work. Folk tradition leans on this green bandage for minor burns, bug bites, and even the odd nettle sting. Beyond the first aid kit, plantain leaves steep into a mild grassy tea, a classic demulcent in herbal language, sipped for a scratchy throat or after a day hollering at summer camp. Come late summer, the plant's slender flower spikes dry to a brittle brown and yield tiny seeds that can be winnowed and ground into a nutty, wild flower. Some old-timers even add a spoonful to bread dough for a rustic twist. If you're harvesting, watch for lookalikes. Narrow-leaf plantain stands taller with skinny, lance-like leaves, while broadleaf plantain always keeps its rounded, ground-hugging shape. Once you recognize that ribbed leaf and sturdy rosette, you'll start seeing plantain everywhere, a gentle, sidewalk companion ready to lend a hand when the world gives you a scrape. Stinging nettle stands tall along creek banks and damp meadows, its leaves shaped like long hearts, sharply serrated and covered in fine stinging hairs called trichomes. Brushing bare skin against these hairs delivers a memorable sting, a built-in lesson in caution. The stem is square and sturdy, and clusters of tiny greenish flowers dangle from the leaf axils as summer approaches. Nettle's unmistakable tingle sets it apart from any other wild green, making gloves and scissors essential for harvest. The best time to gather nettle is late spring, before flowering, when the top few inches of young shoots are most tender. Older stems grow tough and gritty, so foragers snip only the freshest growth into paper bags. Once home, a quick blanch or sauté neutralizes the sting, transforming nettle into a nourishing green. Young shoots contain 150 milligrams of calcium and up to 4 milligrams of iron per 100 grams, levels that rival or surpass many cultivated greens. This mineral punch explains why nettle has long been valued as a spring tonic in traditional European broths and teas, especially when winter stores ran low. Nettle's flavor is mild and earthy, with a hint of wildness. It shines in two main preparations, steeped as a vivid green tea or sautéed for a spinach-like side. Some cooks fold it into soups, pestos, or pasta fillings. Always handle raw nettle with gloves until cooked or dried. Dead nettle, a harmless look-alike, has similar leaves, but no sting and purple flowers. Once recognized, the electric handshake of true nettle is unforgettable, a wild green that rewards careful, confident harvesting. Burdock is the original hitchhiker, famous for its stubborn burrs that inspired the invention of Velcro. In 1941, Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral studied a burdock burr under a microscope and saw a forest of tiny hooks, each perfectly designed to latch onto fur or fabric. His hook and loop fastener patent would change everything from sneakers to spacesuits, all thanks to a weed most people ignore. Burdock's signature starts with its leaves, huge, triangular, and soft as velvet underneath, often stretching wider than a dinner plate. In its first year, burdock grows a low rosette and pours energy into a thick, pale taproot. By the second year, a sturdy, purple-tinged stalk shoots up, sometimes taller than a child, topped with clusters of thistle-like, purple-brown flower heads. These mature into the infamous burrs by late summer, ready to cling to anything passing by. The best time to dig for burdock root is in the autumn of its first year, before the plant bolts. That's when the taproot is loaded with up to 30% inulin, a prebiotic fiber that gives roasted burdock its gentle, caramel-like sweetness. During wartime shortages, roasted burdock root became a popular caffeine-free coffee substitute. Herbalists simmer the dried root for a classic decoction, while young leaves, though bitter, can be tossed into salads for a wild green boost. Always dig first-year roots, because second-year roots turn tough and lose their sweetness. Watch for lookalikes. Hogweed grows tall but has deeply lobed leaves and flat-topped flowers, and never the hooked burrs or velvet-backed leaves that make burdock unforgettable. Number 5. Mullein is the gentle giant of the field, waving its torch of golden flowers high above the grasses. The first thing you will notice is the rosette of huge, silvery green leaves at your feet, soft as a rabbit's ear, with a velvet nap that lingers on your palm. Run your fingers along the surface, and you will remember the texture long after you leave the field. In its second year, mullein sends up a single, unbranched stalk, often taller than a person, topped with a dense spike of 5-petaled yellow blooms, sometimes called a golden candle on the hillside. Mullein loves sun and dry, gravelly soil, popping up along fence lines, old roads, and the edges of abandoned lots. It is a biennial, so the rosette stage comes first, then the tall, flowering stalk in year 2. Those fuzzy leaves are best gathered in early spring before the stem emerges, while the flowers are picked fresh in midsummer. Each part has its moment. Leaves for soothing teas or poultices, flowers for infusing into golden oil. Folk tradition leans on mullein for comfort. Herbalists steep the leaves in hot water for a mild, slightly sweet tea, or crush them into a poultice for minor skin irritations. The real kitchen table favorite is mullein flower oil. Fill a glass jar with fresh yellow blossoms, cover with olive oil, and let it steep in a sunny window for 2 weeks. Strain, and you have a classic ear balm passed down through generations. The plant's secret is in its chemistry: leaves rich in mucilage and saponins, flowers loaded with gentle aromatics. And here is a marvel: mullein seeds can wait a century in the soil, ready to sprout when the ground is disturbed. For foragers, the main lookalike is comfrey, which has rougher, bristly leaves and purple, not yellow flowers. Once you have felt mullein's velvet leaf, you will never mistake it. From the fuzzy rosette to the tall golden spike, mullein is the soft landing at the end of any wild walk, a plant that remembers and is remembered for generations. Across all 5 of these so-called weeds, one truth stands out: the overlooked and ordinary are often the most generous. Once you know their names and faces, the whole green world feels less like a backdrop and more like a pantry and medicine chest. Nature's useful surprises are always underfoot. Which one will you spot first?